your name, what position you are running for, and why you chose to run.
My name is Andrew Fletcher. I'm running for Asheville City Council, and I'm running to bring representation from a member of the workforce to Asheville City Council. That's something I think is deeply lacking, not just in our city, but all across the country.
All right. What specifically would you like to achieve during your time on City Council if elected?
Well, a lot of what happens in City Council is unpredictable. It shows up on your desk, and you have to bring your values to that decision-making process. And so I think what people are looking for is somebody with the values to take those things that aren't predicted and to have an expectation that they're going to be given a fair shake, and the interests of the working people of Asheville will be better represented. And that is what I would really like to do. I'd also like to stop throwing money at short-term solutions and think way beyond the next election cycle, and get better value for taxpayers' dollars by investing in long-term solutions. And I think that is deeply lacking as well. And we tend to not think very far beyond the next election cycle. And I think that leads to a lot of Band-Aid style solutions rather than long-term cures for what ails us.
What are your views on homelessness in Asheville, and how do you feel current it has been handled? What are your 3 ways you would tackle the issue of homelessness? And we'll stop there, and that's a long one. So what are your views on homelessness, and how do you feel it's being handled right now?
Well, my views on homelessness come from my front porch. I live right next to downtown, and I see and experience the problems that do exist. And but I identify these problems as a large number of individuals that have been led to a desperate place in life and have very few good choices in front of them. As far as 3 solutions, there are 3 solutions. That's a good question, because that is there are 3 strategies when you look at cities that have done a better job of dealing with this, and every city has dealt with this. This is a nationwide problem. We're dealing with it in our local way, but when you look at what the solutions are, they involve 3 things. And the first one is trying to keep people housed in the first place. That's the cheapest one, and that is the one that is best for the individuals, and I think best for both our city and wherever the problem is occurring. The second one is to deal with people experiencing homelessness, providing adequate and safe shelter for them, and try to make that time period as brief as possible. That's also a responsible way to spend taxpayer dollars. The third is to quickly house those people in permanent supportive housing as quickly as we can. Those are long-term solutions that actually deal with the root and the cause of the problem. Many other solutions I've seen proposed, and much of the current strategy involves just moving the problem around, moving it from one neighborhood to another. And I don't believe that's fair to the neighborhoods, and I don't believe that's fair to the people experiencing homelessness. And I think that's a good example of the short-term thinking and the dollar that you have to spend again and again, rather than the dollar you can spend once to invest in a long-term solution that is both respectful of the taxpayers and people of the city, and also respectful of the people that are experiencing homelessness.
What are your thoughts on low barrier shelters, camping, panhandling, and the Needle program, and how would you move forward on those issues if elected?
Well, I firmly believe in harm reduction and giving people better choices. I think a lot of the problems that we see with those things that you mentioned are really due to the fact that these folks do not have a lot of good choices in front of them. And so instead of criminalizing people with no good choices, we need to be able to providing better choices for them so that we can have better opportunities to help them. So unfortunately, the bootstraps that people used to use to pick themselves up just simply don't work in this country anymore. And it's a very long-term problem. And we're seeing the consequences of all those broken bootstraps and all these people that are experiencing these problems. We've seen pharmaceutical companies prey upon the capacity we all have for addiction. And some people get trapped in that capacity. and it's turned into private profits and social costs. So when a pharmaceutical company gets someone addicted, we all pay for it when that person is at the bottom of that pill bottle. And so that's the type of long-term thinking and getting at the root cause of these things that I'm very interested in exploring. And there will be some money coming around from some of these settlements where these pharmaceutical companies are just now beginning to pay for out of their profits for the deep social harm that they've caused, the deep personal harm that they've caused to individuals. And I think that we should responsibly take that money and start repairing these individuals and the damage done to our city and our society from these issues. And some of these steps are going to be difficult, like low-income housing, low-barrier housing, but they are necessary if they are the necessary medicine for the real deep social damage that has occurred from the predatory behavior of pharmaceutical companies.
This is kind of a follow-up about the needle program. Would you reconsider some of the current grants to nonprofits that have no accountability? For example, the study collective needle exchange?
I believe that if you don't have trash pickup, you get litter.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said before, making sure that people have better choices is very important. And there's not a single city policy I wouldn't reconsider about anything.
All right. What do you see as the biggest issue in Asheville City or Buncombe County, and even as specifically as local neighborhoods are facing today, and how you would tackle those issues during your time if elected?
I think affordable housing is a very deep issue. I'm old enough to remember when affordable housing was just called housing. Something has deeply broken about the housing market, and the conditions I experience as a renter are very, very different. And we know that 50% of our city are renters. And one of the issues that I see, again from my front porch, is I live across the street from a formerly affordable housing unit. It was given a 15-year period of affordability, and now half those units are dark all week. And that's the same half are registered to out-of-state addresses. So we have housing units here, but the nationwide, the way the housing market has gone is to treat many housing units as bank accounts rather than dwellings. And so from a city policy perspective, I believe that we need to be deeply investing in the places that the private developers have sincerely just deeply failed us. Current affordable housing policy really relies on putting money into the pockets of these developers for just a pittance of housing. And I think that is not a very good way to spend the taxpayer dollars, and that the city needs to get serious about affordable housing. And that's going to require every neighborhood to deal with that. I don't believe just choosing one neighborhood here or there to create housing is the right way to go. I think that we need to have housing for residents, and to do a much better job at giving people more rungs on the ladder, with housing. It's very, very difficult to go from being a renter to a homeowner. It's my personal story, and it's told thousands of times over in the city. And when we have people trapped in those places with their ability to pay someone else's mortgage but not their ability to pay their own, I think that is a root cause to a lot of our problems, and I think it's deeply damaged our culture. As someone who works in the arts industry, I can tell that some of the people fleeing this place are the people who have made this place a beautiful and cultural center for not just locals but for tourists. And I feel deeply that we are failing the workers in the city by not being serious about the size of the problem when it comes to affordable housing. And again, this is something that's happened to every city in the country right now. We are not special. But what I'm not interested in is just turning taxpayer dollars into profit for affordable housing developers. We need to be able to solve this problem without creating profit for a few people that are well connected.
One of the biggest problems in the city is that the communities are often left out of big decisions and conversations. Will you listen to all of their concerns from all the constituents, even the ones who may not share your same beliefs, on how to make Asheville a place for everyone? And how do you plan to involve residents and communities in the decision-making process in our town? Would you be willing to hold quarterly meetings on a rotating basis in neighborhoods?
Absolutely, that's a great question, and bringing elected officials into neighborhoods, I think, is something I'd really like to see. I know there's been past council members that have done such a thing, and it hasn't happened in a while. I'd be glad to do that. I'd also like to see our elected officials hold open office hours in City Hall so that people could come and go with no closed doors and talk about what's happening in their neighborhoods. I'm also deeply disturbed because I sit on two city commissions, the Downtown Commission and the Public Art and Cultural Commission, both places where I serve as vice chair. I'm deeply disturbed by this current proposal to remove over 100 individuals from their voluntary advisory roles with the city. I think that the city has a great capacity to take this advice from neighbors and from neighborhoods so that regular people like me can have a seat in the ground floor of City Hall to try to bring our experience, and sometimes specialized skills and perspectives to City Hall. Unfortunately, with this current plan to wipe out most of those advisory boards, we're going to lose centuries of neighbors' experiences that right now are being brought to City Hall. And so instead of removing these boards, I'd like to empower them and listen to them. So we already have capacity and infrastructure to do this, but we don't have elected leaders that are actually asking these advisory boards, listening to their advice, and then enacting them. So we have capacity, but what I don't see is the values to really listen before leadership.
Okay. One of the biggest issues affecting downtown residents, visitors, and small businesses is transients sleeping and camping in Pritchard Park, on sidewalks, and in business entryways. What is the solution to the transient population, and what can be done to clean up and increase safety specifically in downtown? And that's not just the like chronically homeless, it's the transient that comes through and then leave.
Well, I've heard this in just about every city. Every city says that their homeless people come from someplace else. And the truth is that everybody moves around, whether you have a roof over your head or whether you don't. And so tourists are transients that have money to buy a hotel. If you don't have enough money to put a roof over your head, the truth is that after a certain hour of day, there is no legal place for you to exist in the city. And so again, like I was talking before about when you look at people who are experiencing these things, when you look at what their choices are in life, they may not have a good choice in front of them. Their only choice to rest their head may be an illegal one. And so criminalizing this type of behavior when these folks have no legal option means that the city does supply housing for them. It's in the form of a jail. I don't think that's a very good use of taxpayer money. It's a short-term solution, and it's something it's a dollar you got to spend again and again. We want to get serious about these types of issues. We have to create long-term solutions. That's a respectful way to treat the individual and a respectful way to treat the taxpayer that's paying for it, and to restore, I think that the health and beauty of our city. We need to think about restoring the health and shelter of these individuals.
Okay. Do you agree with defunding the police?
No.
Okay. This is the last question, then we'll do like a.
I'd like to follow up on that.
Okay,
Defunding the police question.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, the police in my entire adult life have been treated as a Swiss Army knife of every problem. And part of the reason for that is that we used to have better funding from the state level for mental health care. And without that, there's been a use of I think a misuse of the police for every problem that another agency doesn't want to deal with. And I don't think that, just like a Swiss Army knife, they might be good for one thing, but they're not good for everything. And if we treat one department of the city as the solution to every problem in the city, I don't think we're not going to get good results. I think we're going to get the results that we're seeing right now. I know that the Asheville Police Department is down in staffing, so is every other department in the city. The fire department is down. The Parks and Rec department is down, sometimes by a lot more than the police department is down in staffing. So this is not a problem relegated to one department. And I think talking about the problem like it's relegated to one department is not helpful. It's because it's not realistic. So, and again, the police have a short-term solution. They can move the problem around, but they cannot solve the root cause of the problem. So you have to spend that same dollar on that same person again and again. And it's not making neighborhoods happy. It's not making neighborhoods safer. And there's no number of police that can solve the long-term problems. They are adept at dealing with the problem the day of, but not the long-term solution. So I don't think it's a very responsible use of our tax dollars to do that. We do need to find how those dollars can be best spent on long-term solutions. And I think that is the only long-term way to make sure that all our neighborhoods are safe, and all the individuals in our city are safe as well.
Okay. Let's end with a final thought or
Sure.
note. What do you want to tell the voters?
I'd like to tell the voters that, well, I think that a lot of folks are unhappy with the status quo. And I am an independent, and I do not have loyalty to party or politics. I am happy to meet and speak with anyone. And as an independent, I think that I bring, and a member of the working class, that I bring a perspective that has been very much missing in our city and our entire country. I believe that people like me should be able to lead. It shouldn't just be all businessmen and lawyers and real estate developers making decisions for everyone. I think that having a mix of people, personalities, and backgrounds in our elected positions is something that we're missing and that we're suffering for it. So I would bring a perspective that is more in common with people who are working day to day for a wage, rather than people who are working in the real estate industry, working in law or business. I think the best companies in the world listen to their workers, and the best cities in the world listen to their people. And that's where my values are. Those values, I've lived them. I'm not just putting them together for a campaign video. And they are gonna stay with me my entire life, no matter how this election goes. But I'd be privileged to help lead this city.
All right, well, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you very much.